This is a day that the Lord has made. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Vanessa. I'm a Christian woman doing my best to put God first. I am a mom and I wanted to share with you all the children's stories of the Bible from the Old and New Testaments. It was a book given to me the Christmas I was 9 years old. It introduced me to Jesus, to God, to all the stories of the Bible, which led me to want to read the real Bible. So I want to read every single chapter. It will be one chapter per video. If you want to read this with your children, feel free to do so. Enjoy. Chapter 16, Ezra. After the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the great temple, the leaders of the people who were still alive were carried off to captivity in Babylon. Here they lived in exile for many years. In time, Babylon, the mighty city, was in its turn captured by the Persian king, Cyrus the Great, who tried to establish peace and prosperity in the many conquered countries that he ruled. He permitted the people living in Jerusalem to rebuild the city and the temple, and promised that the treasures of the Lord would be restored to Jerusalem. Following the rebuilding of the temple, Cyrus the Great put a priest named Ezra in charge of the temple. The king also granted him permission to lead another group of exiles back to Jerusalem in order to dedicate the treasures. The generous King Cyrus also gave Ezra gold and silver and money with which to buy bulls and lambs to sacrifice to God. So Ezra began to prepare for the return to Jerusalem. Outside the city, on the shore of a stream named the Ahava, the band of exiles camped for 3 days to organize the caravan. Ezra went among them to make sure that all the leaders of the Israelites were with him, but he found that no Levites were there. Many of the exiles preferred to stay in Babylon, where they had become settled, rather than make the long, hard journey back to Jerusalem. The Levites were a special priestly group who were appointed to help take care of the temple. Because Ezra wished to serve God well, he recruited 38 of these men to go with him to check the treasure and guard it, since they were men set apart for this task. Ezra then asked his people to fast for 1 day to show their reverence and to pray to God for protection during their journey. For Ezra knew that there were many enemies along the way who would try to ambush them. The caravan finally arrived safely in Jerusalem with all the vessels of gold and silver, which were placed in the temple in devotion to God. Then the high priest took the bulls and lambs and gave them to God as a sacrifice. Shortly after the treasures had been dedicated, officials of the temple brought Ezra bad news. The people who had been living in Jerusalem before Ezra and his men had returned there were freely mixing with nations that worshipped idols. And they were also entering into marriages with strangers who did not serve God. When Ezra heard this, he was deeply troubled, for he knew that this time no enemies had prevented his people from worshiping God. They had simply turned away from God through their own willfulness and disobedience. Ezra fell to his knees in prayer and wept bitterly for all the people who had provoked so faithless. While Ezra was praying, a great assembly of men, women, and children gathered around him, and one of the men stepped forward to speak to him. He told Ezra that there was still hope in Israel, for some of the people knew what God had done for them. These people agreed to separate themselves from the idol worshippers and return to God. Ezra came forward and made the people take an oath, pledging themselves to do what they had promised, which was to send the adulterers away from Jerusalem and to be obedient to God's will. I will have a playlist, like I said, by chapter in Old Testament and then the New Testament if you want to continue reading. See you next time.